Welcome everybody to the Reboot Your Life series. I am Linda Krause-Barnett, and I am so excited to be here with you today. As always, I'm trying to give you guys the content that you need to help in your awakening, ascension, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in your life right now. However you feel like you need your heart to pop and burst open, and whatever it is you need to infiltrate to get that spark back and to bring excitement and attraction and magnetism back into your life. So I usually have women on as guests, but I'm so thrilled and excited to have Maxwell with me today, because I think we need to have this heart-to-heart talk with a male and a female so that you guys get the whole picture, because it takes all of us to create this earth. So Maxwell, thank you so much for being here. And if you could just introduce yourself to everybody so we know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on. This is such a pleasure. And I know I'm probably a lot scruffier than some of our other guests in the past, but
yeah, I don't have beards.
Well, thank you so much again for having me. This really is just like a true honor and a pleasure to be able to share my story and really share kind of like some of the cool things that have gone on in my development as well. Yeah, so what I do a little bit, just a little bit of my background. I'm a confidence empowerment coach. I help people step up into feeling their full power and overcoming their fear of failure, their rejection in life, and really reaching powerfully for their dreams. So very much in alignment with what it is that you do. And like I said, I'm just really blessed and honored to be able to contribute to your audience and really offer a new perspective. So thank you so much for having me.
I'm honored that you're here. So I want to start by saying the way I met Maxwell is that we're in a group together, and if it's okay if I tell this story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Linda.
He did a post, and I think the title is what lured me in, and it said something like progress, not perfection, which is, as some of you know who follow me, that's like my belief system. I think perfectionism is a man-made concept that humans were not designed, right? We're not designed as human beings. We are perfect. So there's nothing we need to become. We just are in our wholeness. So when I read that, I was intrigued. And then it was a video of Maxwell singing and playing the guitar and strumming. And it was so authentic. It was like, remember thinking, if we all show up each day like that, just like unafraid to be who we are and in full acceptance of ourselves, and knowing that those who are meant for us will be on the ride, and those who aren't, that's okay too, we would just change the world. And that video ignited that in me. So I went to his Facebook page, and it was just like aligned. So tell us a little bit about your concept of fear. Like, tell us how fear has contributed or stopped you. Just kind of talk to us about that.
Yeah. And actually, Linda, you really touched down on like the main point of really just like the core of what I like to talk about with people, and the core of what it is that I feel in my own being, and just like in my own journey of development and progress. It's been that sense of like, a lot of people get this fear of rejection, or that they're not good enough, or any of these sort of concepts that really hold them back from powerfully living their lives. And it all stems from that idea that like, I'm not valuable, I'm not worth it. It's just this lack of self-worth, lack of self-love. And you hit the nail on the head, right, with the opening statement. We already are enough. We already are whole and complete. And there's a lot of these like ideologies that kind of come up through either our upbringing, or they're shared by our peers, or we perceive something wrong with our physique or anything along those lines, that really allows us to internalize that feeling of not being enough and not feeling like we have a lot to offer in the world. And that's just, it's so entirely opposite from what the truth is. It really comes down to this idea of acceptance and understanding. And just like a lot of times, like it has a lot to do with forgiveness, like forgiveness of the past, and forgiving ourselves from either ways that we saw ourselves, or things that we hold on to in terms of disempowering beliefs, or just things that we've been told from society, or our teachers, or our parents, or even our friends, that really like hold us back from living that life authentically that we are all here to do. And that's really what it is just being able to express yourself fully, being okay with being angry, being okay with being sad, And again, just like recognizing that these emotions are part of our existence and part of our life without letting it like control who we are and control what it is that we are able to contribute out into society. And it really just comes down to this idea that the human experience is so, it's so incredible. Like there's really
I know.
nothing else that I can like describe it as. Like
I'm
all the
with you.
pain, all the suffering, all the joy, all the love. Like the way that I see things is like we do live in a very dualistic reality when it comes to like opposites and stuff. Like there is just as much fear as there is love. Now it's just like it really comes into a balance. And one thing that I really like to promote and one thing that I teach is it's not living a life without fear. It's living your life with courage. And so what that means is basically acting in spite of those fears, acting in spite of feeling like you might be judged by someone or feeling that you might fail or feeling that you might not be good enough. That's really what got me started on my journey. And you mentioned perfectionism kind of at the start as well. I was a victim to perfectionism for the longest point in my life. And even still have tendencies to kind of like fall back into those old patterns of behavior as well. And it really just comes down to like, it is, especially when you do take quality in the work that you want to produce and, and the things that you want to contribute, it always just feels like it's not enough or it could always be better. But one of the really cool things that I've learned on my journey is you can never get it wrong and you're never going to be done. I learned that kind of listening to Abraham Hicks's work, and I love following Esther Hicks. Like she's definitely one of my favorite mentors to follow. And just that concept of you're never going to get it wrong and you're never going to be done. It's really alleviating in terms of like pressure. Because if you recognize that just moving forward and taking any step in the direction of your goals is moving forward in that goal and being successful, then there's always room for improvement. Like perfection is such like an ideal that is never actually achieved.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't. And it keeps people feeling like so disempowered in their work because no matter what they produce, it's never good enough for them. And it's like, we can still take pride in like how far we've come. Sometimes it's okay to take a breath, stop and like look back at how far you actually have come and be proud of that. Not really looking ahead forward and saying, I'm not good enough to be there yet. Everyone's exactly where they need to be on their journey. And I really, truly believe that. And it just comes down to just like having fun with it, making mistakes and being okay. But mistakes only become errors, or no, errors only become mistakes if we fail to learn from those errors.
Lessons,
Everyone makes errors. So.
You know, I think that like we're all here to have a human experience, and that's why we didn't come with like the ability to understand all of our mechanism, because if we did, we would like we're already this sentient being, right? But we came here to understand what a human experience is like. And so in order to really have the human experience, we have to be unfamiliar with the software, unfamiliar with the hardware, because that is where the learning takes place. But I always kind of analogize it to like, if you were to put a toolbox in front of a child and you weren't to explain what each tool does, there's a good chance they try to like use the back of a screwdriver to hammer a nail or use the front of a hammer to try and like, you know, they would experiment because their tools aren't labeled. Their tools don't have predefined jobs. So in the wonderment of someone who gets it and has no idea what to do with it, they try things out. And I believe that our emotions are much that way. Like they all have a purpose. Fear has a purpose. Anger has a purpose. You know, in the spiritual community, people are always like, release your fears and release your doubts. Like, no, don't release it. Integrate it, activate it, find out what its purpose is. We just don't know how to use the tools. And that though is like the beauty of this life experience is I have this anger, ask it, question it. Like, why are you here? What are you here to teach me? I know that you have a purpose, and my job is to just figure out what that purpose is. Like, I need to figure out that a hammer is used with nails and that a screwdriver is used with screws, but we don't deep dive into our own essence enough to like get those answers, because we assume if it's not working, like, well, I tried to use a screwdriver for a nail and it didn't work, so I guess it's broken. I guess I'm broken. But it's like, no, you're not broken. You're 100% whole in all moments. You just need to have the right tool for the right challenge or obstacle and then you'll be fine, you know? And I feel like fear has become such a bad word. It's like the 4-letter F word that we have overused, you know, like the one you're allowed to say. And actually, I think it's more of a bad word because we've like demonized it. And really, fear is a friend if we know how to use it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so many points that you touched down on. I think, you know, I'll do my best to kind of work through each thing so I don't lose kind of my track of thought. But yeah, just like that childlike curiosity to basically explore the world and be totally comfortable with using the backside of a screwdriver to figure it out. You know, being I'm very much a kinesthetic learner.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've discovered in my journey, like especially this year, even though I've seen it my whole life, I've really recognized it. I actually learn best when I make a mistake. I'll learn how to do something faster if I do it wrong the first time than if I do it right the first time.
Yeah, like if it hurts
And
right away.
exactly. And so it was something that always frustrated me growing up. Like, why am I always making mistakes? Why am I always making mistakes? I must not be good enough. And it was like, no, because like looking back on my life, like some of the best lessons I've ever learned came from making those mistakes. I couldn't be who I am now without everything that I've experienced in the past. And I was taking a course earlier this year, run by Dean Graciosi and Tony Robbins. And one thing that Dean brought up, which I thought was, I love this quote, but how many times are we going to watch like our kids fall while they're learning to walk before we're like, you know what, that kid's just not cut out for walking, I guess, you know? So it's just like,
I'll never be a walker.
He'll never be a walker.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting, like how, as we grow up and how, as we move past this stage of curiosity and societal kind of like views get imparted on us. And then we get more experience from like outside perspectives from our peers and everything kind of like shaping who we see ourselves as. It's so interesting, like as adults, when we try something new or when we like attempt to create something and it doesn't work the first time, we're just like, we throw our hands up in the air. It's like, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and I've done that. I've done that.
Yeah, we all do. And it's really cool. So snowboarding is one of my greatest passions. I've been doing it for over 20 years now. I taught snowboard instruction up at Breckenridge for beginners, and beginning is actually one of my favorite parts to teach. Just because it's like, you get those people on the mountain who it's their first time, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they're like, I'm going to be killing it. I'm going to be killing it. And you know, they get on the board and they struggle to get up for the first 2 hours. And it's like, look, it's okay. Like you can just let that go. It's part of the learning process. Everyone learns at different speeds. Everyone's journey is different. And I think like a lot of it comes down to is we just judge ourselves and we judge our value based off of where everyone else is in their journey.
Yes.
And it's so frustrating because it's like, look, you are exactly where you need to be in your growth and your development. We always call them growing pains. They're never called growing pleasures. No one actually enjoys it. And if everyone thought it was easy and they did enjoy it, then we'd have a much different world where everyone is just striving to better themselves every day. And not saying that it's wrong or it's right to work to do that. It's just everyone has their own path of development and everyone is going to be in a different spot. And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
It's just one thing that I like to liken ourselves to clouds. You know, if you ever look up in the sky, you're never like, what the hell's wrong with that cloud? Like that cloud's not right. Or like, you know, it's like all the clouds are just clouds. Like, you know, there's no perfect cloud. And it's just like, there's no perfect person. It's just, we are all part of nature just as everything else is. And I think that's really where a lot of the sadness and a lot of the fear come from, is because in our society, it's so heavily taught that we are separate from nature. We're meant to control nature. We're meant to like be above this and control it. And it's like, the more we create this division and separation, the more it creates division and separation within ourselves. And so this is really the biggest thing that I like to explore with people, is just understanding that it's like, look, you are exactly where you need to be. Your fears, your emotions, you are okay in feeling those things. It doesn't make you a bad person. Even though you've made mistakes in the past, you can learn from that and really change your future behavior. You're not confined to who you were.
Yeah.
We create ourselves daily. You know, just because I did something well yesterday doesn't mean I'm going to do it well again today. I practice archery pretty frequently, and I've been shooting for years, and there's days I'll get up and I'll take a couple shots and I'll be like, wow, I am shooting like garbage today. But it doesn't like, and that's totally fine, because it's, you know, maybe that's a disempowering thing to say, but it's just an acknowledgement of like where we are in the current present moment doesn't necessarily have any impact on like where we were in the past or where we are in the future. It's just like being focused on what's going on around us and being okay with that. So,
you know, you also have like ignited 47 different thoughts in 47 different directions. So I'm going to try to not get off tangent too much, but like I have to. So first off, you talked about the clouds, which is hilarious because I was flying to an event. It's actually the event I write about in my book that changed my life. And we left during a really bad storm because I live in Florida, and it was just like rainy and dark and lightning for as far as the eye could see when you're on land. And I remember just going up being like, wow, this is like a really bad storm. And it was like, it just felt like it surrounded you. You couldn't tell where the storm ended. And as soon as you got high above the clouds, as soon as we were up in heaven, like up there in the clouds, it was the most beautiful sky I'd ever seen in my life. Just, it like still gives me chills till this day. It was just blue with these rolling white clouds for infinity. Like there was not an end. And I remember it being a really big turning point in my life because I thought all the people down below that are in the storm think that the storm is everywhere. But if they could just like lift themselves above it, if you could just get above the storm, you would know that it's clear forever and ever and ever and ever. You know, you're just in that pocket. You're just in a little pocket. It isn't everything. And sometimes we get so caught up in thinking that, you know, that storm that's around us, that darkness that's around us or whatever we're in. And what that leads me to is limiting beliefs, because our most limiting belief is that we have to believe our limiting beliefs. Like we believe them, you know, that is the limiting belief. And you don't have to commit to that. Like it's a pivotable, changeable story. And everything you believe has, except for love, like we are taught everything else. The only thing we come into this world naturally able to do really well is love. And so everything else has been taught to you by someone with a bias, with a perspective, with an agenda, with a belief system of their own. And these days, as I grow and get older and raise children, I'm just learning the power of questioning your beliefs, like looking at it and saying, do you serve me? Like, are you here to get me where I need to go? Or are you trying to stop me? What is it? And how can I pivot you so that if you're not telling me what gets me to my next level, that I could rewrite you? I could like literally rewrite you as a belief and give myself a new one. And that is what inspired me to write the book, is like, we had this limiting belief that if you get too old, once you have kids, once you get married, once you do all that, it's like over. And I remember looking in the mirror going, oh my gosh, like I've missed it. This is not who I dreamt of being when I was a little girl. And now it's too late. I'm done. Like this is my life. And it's not my life. Like my life is changeable. That right now, today, yesterday, today looks nothing like 4 years ago looked. And it wasn't because there was like magic. It was because I changed my magnetism. It was because I changed my thoughts and my beliefs, and like I attracted new things into my life. And I'm so like fired up for the world to know this secret. It's not a secret, but no one's listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's pretty crazy. I mean, and I know you're speaking on law of attraction, and just for anyone out there listening, it really is magic. Like it's changed my life. Just like, and it's so curious because we get caught up in thinking, I'm going to get on a rant about law of attraction here. So I'll avoid that. Yeah, we get so caught up thinking that essentially it's like we have to do something, or that like we constantly have to be doing. And especially in westernized culture, like this is so prominent, and it's so unfortunate that we see the differences in how we treat our elderly versus how they treat elderly over in like Eastern cultures, where it's like we have such a focus on doing here in the US or just other westernized countries that as soon as you're not doing anything, you're considered like non-essential or worthless or that sort of thing. So you just kind of get put off to the side, which is really frustrating. But the key thing that I've really discovered is that who we are choosing to be, who we are choosing to create ourselves as, what thoughts we are allowing into our mind, and really what it is that we're choosing to think in terms of our belief structure, whether they be limiting beliefs or empowering beliefs, it's really up to you. This is the coolest thing, because a lot of times people get so caught up in their story of who they were in the past that it feels so real to them. Right. That it's like, as soon as it feels real and you recognize it, there's no alternative. Like it's so concrete. Yeah. But when you can take a step back and you can say, wait a minute, I'm having this limiting belief show up for me right now. Do I really choose to believe this? And another one of my favorite mentors is Dr. Sean Stevenson. He talks about this in a really powerful way. He's like, never choose to believe a thought that disempowers you. Such a cool guy. I'm not going to rant about him. Check him out if you have the opportunity. They call him the 3-foot giant. But
a lot like Joe Dispenza's work, that you can reprogram your
absolutely.
brain.
Yeah, neuro-linguistic programming, yes. Biohacking, whatever you want to call it. Like, there's so much scientific evidence to prove today that we actually have a lot more conscious control over who we are than just like our emotional state, or even just like our physical state or anything like that. The power of our mind is so significant that we are literally creating who we are every single day. And this is again something that I love to talk about, because oftentimes people look at their stories of their past, and by focusing on the past and focusing on what happened, they're just choosing to recreate it in the present. This is why people get into disempowering relationships over and over with different people. They're like, why do I keep running into these same disempowering relationships? I'm like, well, have you chosen to change anything? It's like, no, I'm still doing the same stuff. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So what is it that you are choosing to attract into your experience? Because it's incredible the things that show up for you when you can take a step back and really just acknowledge that it's just your perspective. It's not reality, because what you are perceiving might be entirely different than what someone else is perceiving. It's interesting. For example, here's just like a silly example. I was at a buddy's house the other day, and the dogs got out. Okay. Like, my dog ran out and her dog ran out. And to me, I thought it was a fun little game that I got to chase my dog around the neighborhood. Like, I was having fun with it. I'm riding my one wheel after him. I'm chasing after him. It was like one of the worst parts of her day. Yeah, it was traumatic. It was traumatic for her. And we're both experiencing the same exact thing. But she's like, oh, this is so inconvenient. Yeah. Of course this would happen today, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, of course this would happen today. I'm having a blast. Like, this is what I'm attracting. So it's just, it's funny how we can literally go through the same exact experience, two different people, and see it entirely differently. Yeah.
You have a different recount of their entire lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's crazy how you choose to color your experience. And this is something that I love to talk about as well, is that there really isn't anything inherently good or bad in the world. It just is. But the thing is that we are the ones who choose to color it with, this is the greatest day of my life, or this is the worst day of my life. Because sometimes there are extreme tragedies that I've heard people share were one of their greatest moments of growth and actually brought them to be a stronger person because of it. So it really depends on how you ultimately see the situation. Do you see it as empowering, or do you see it as disempowering? And that's really your choice. So
I love that. I think that there's no waste. Like, in other words, I think if we weren't supposed to experience it, it wouldn't be here. Like,
absolutely.
So one of the things, it's so funny because I'm like really into quantum physics and the spiritual world and all of that, yet I disagree with so many beliefs that are taught in this realm. One of them, and I love Eckhart, I love him. He's great. But, and the power of now is a great concept. I get it. And this being in the present is super important, because you get to enjoy things like running after dogs because you're living in the moment. And I understand that. But at the same time, like, if the moment was all we were supposed to experience, we would have no knowledge of the future and no remembrance of the past. Like, it would be like that movie, 50 First Dates. Like, every day would be a brand new day. And so you have to question, like, okay, well, why do we have this energetic imprint that's called a memory? And why can I, step into my desire for the future? It has to have a paradigm. It has to be part of the framework somehow. And I think that it is, because I think the past is what you could look back when you've learned your lessons and you realize you've conquered something important, you now use that remembrance of the past to teach others, right? To help others on their journey. We wouldn't be able to teach if we didn't have an imprint of our journey. And at the same time, when you look forward, then you're like, okay, this is where I want to go. This is what inspires me. This is where I want to take my present moment, and I want to put it in this direction because that looks awesome. So I think there's so much stimulus. There's so much to listen to. There's so many voices out there. And at the end of the day, you have to ask the questions that make it relevant to your purpose and mission here on earth. You have to, and if you don't know what that is, like, I used to have vision boards. I say this all the time because they sucked at the moment. Because it was like, wow, let's see. I want to be skinny and I'm not. So that's why it's on here. And I want a beautiful house and I want a beautiful, I want to be perfect at all these things. And obviously I'm not, because if I was, they wouldn't be on my board. And so what I started to do was tap into the emotion, like forget all that stuff. How do you want to feel? I want to feel abundant. I want to feel passionate and like vivacious and excited. And I began to chase those feelings. And I'm telling you, I'm like a broken record, but it changes your life.
It really does. And Linda, you hit it so perfectly on the head. It's the emotional content that is the most important part. And so it's interesting when we talk about things like vision boards or, any sort of like future prospect or something that we want to create or we want to experience. And it's really funny. I was talking about this with one of my clients the other day. There's this principle in Buddhism. I don't know what they call it in Buddhism, but if anyone's familiar with Alan Watts, he calls it the backwards law. Okay. And so the backwards law is something like this. The pursuit of positivity is in itself a negative experience, whereas the acceptance of the negative experiences in one's life is in fact a positive experience. Now, the way that this works in the idea of like a vision board. And okay, so for me personally, for instance, relationships have been something that's been huge in my life. I feel like that's definitely one of the key lessons that I'm here to learn is to navigate relationships, romantic, personal, and everything like that. And so in the past, I always considered myself a bit of a hopeless romantic. So I would always seek out this experience of being in a relationship. And though it was something that I wanted greatly, it always like hurt to see that I didn't have it. Yeah. And so when every time I saw other people like happy in relationships, it would remind me that I don't have that. Okay. And so it was me focusing on the lack of that thing, yes, which in turn just like attracted more of that experience into my life because that's where my focus was. And so instead of it, just like you said, instead of thinking about the thing that I want and it not being here in my present moment, which isn't really that great of a feeling, it was more like, well, what do I want to, what do I want to feel? Why do I want this relationship? Well, I want to feel love. I want to feel companionship. I want to feel this. I want to feel this. And it really came down to discovering, it's like, wait a minute, I can actually experience all of these things right now with myself if I choose to experience it. So it was more just like focusing on those emotions, like of feeling vibrant, feeling like I could express myself fully to other people, feeling like this, and really just focusing in on those experiences and just watching the magic happen and just seeing like what decided to show up for me. And it's really, really cool to see that it all stems from way of being. And when we are energetically aligned with like the emotional content of what it is that we want to bring into our lives. And again, this is a huge law of attraction thing is like, it really comes to the emotional piece. And one thing I'll just kind of say on this topic, the way Joe Dispenza actually describes this is from a scientific perspective, we are actually emanating energy fields from our bodies. And so the law of attraction kind of works in this way that it's like the thoughts that we think about what we want create an electric part of the wave, whereas our emotional content about how we feel about those things are the magnetic part. And so when our thoughts and our emotions are actually aligned, it creates a coherent electromagnetic wave that generally is like outside the body, and it literally attracts your experience in the quantum field to basically create whatever it is that you're seeking to manifest in your life. It's a really cool concept. And just like it's really tied into the emotional content. So the better you feel, the more things are going to show up in your life that are going to allow you to feel that way. It's pretty cool. Oh no, I lost you.
Oh, sorry. Are you there?
Now I can hear you.
Yeah. It's like a magnet. It's literally like a magnet,
Yep.
you know, and
Absolutely.
if you've tested it, you then, like, once you test a theory, and if you're a person who questions, and if you're not, you should be, like, question everything, because, you know, you are on this journey, and you have to have, you're an avatar in your own game. And so, you know, you have to see what all the things do, you know, you explore and see what other characters in your game are doing, and what, oh wow, this magnetizes, this really works, I'll use this again. And because, like, everything is cyclical. So, you know, in the book I talk about the reboot, because what I had to do was, I realized I was spinning out of control. Like, I just was going down the rabbit hole. And like you said, I was focusing on going down the rabbit hole. I was scared of going down the rabbit hole. And the more I felt those emotions, the further down I went. And finally, what I had to do was, I had to stop. Like, it's just like electronics. I had to turn it off, and then I had to pause. You can't just turn it off and turn it right back on. Like, there's this turn it off and really, like, sit in it and wait. And in that turning off, I had so many questions, because here I was knowing, like, I need to get my smile back. I need to get my spark back. I need to get Linda back, because I'm a mom, and I'm a wife, and I'm a daughter, and I'm a sister, and I'm a yada, 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 yada. But, like, I have completely lost me in this journey. And you can't lose you, because you only have you know? And so in that search, in that journey to find my way back to me, it's so important to explore who you are, not what other people need you to be, not what other people want you to be, but, like, what is my mission? What makes me light up? You know, what do I need each day to connect? And I used to, like, hold a lot of resentment towards meditation, because I was like, the only way to get answers is meditation, and I suck at it. So I guess I'm never getting answers, you know? And it was like, okay, when I exercise, or when I'm at the ocean, like, although I'm not in a meditative trance, I get answers. I get answers when I'm connected to nature, or when my body is moving. So that's my meditation. Like, you've got to use it for yourself. You've got to find a way to make it work for you. There is no right or wrong way to do anything under the sun. There's just your way and my way. And, you know, and what's interesting about this conversation, one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you here is, like, we are literally speaking the same language. And I need the world to hear, like, man, woman, you know, different genders, different perspectives.
Doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter. Like, we are literally our heart language is completely communicating and completely understanding of each other. And the more we can do that, the more relationships will change and evolve in this beautiful way, because we have learned so well in this world. I hear it from my kids. Like, we are teaching the world so well about our differences, but there's not enough lessons about our unity. There's not enough lessons about our humanity, in the sense of, like, Maxwell's a man and Linda's a woman, but we speak the same heart language. Like, and in that domain, when we get together in that realm, there's no gender. Right?
Absolutely.
I kind of went all over the place with that, but
no, I mean, that makes total sense to me.
Okay.
And it's just like, when I you know, when I work to share some of these ideas with some of my peers who they have differing opinions from me, it always frustrates them when I'm like, look, I'm human first. Like, I'm human before I'm a guy. I'm human before I'm white. I'm human before I'm young, or I'm old, or anything like that. So from the human perspective, we all feel pain. We all feel love. We all just generally seek to live happy lives, and just, like, feel fulfilled in, like, expressing ourselves in the way that we can. And just, you know, and a lot of times it comes down to, like, all these, and you're right. I think, like, especially with just, like, things that are showing up in the world these days, there's so much highlighted division and just, like, differences of, like, we're different because of this, or we're different because of this. And if we know anything about law of attraction, and we know anything about where your focus goes, your energy flows. By focusing on the problem, it doesn't really help us with the solution. So like one thing that I really like to promote is be a solution seeker. Don't be a problem solver. And the difference is because when you're a problem solver, you're focused on the problem and you're thinking about things in terms of like what's going on with this problem. But when you're a solution seeker, you are so focused on the solution and what you're seeking to create as opposed to what it is you're moving away from, that those solutions naturally come through inspiration.
That is fantastic. Like, I love that.
And Linda, I so very much resonate with you in terms of like the meditation story. For me, I've discovered that, you know, my easiest way to meditate is to go hike in nature. Or if I'm doing yoga. I've been kind of healing through an injury lately, so I haven't been doing a lot of yoga, but some of my greatest insights like have come up when I've been on my mat. And just like it really comes down to quieting your mind. So however you do that, if you want to sit in front of a candle, if you just want to sit by the river, if you just want to like, you know, whatever works for you, because just because it works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. It's interesting thing, just like diets, you know, just one diet is not going to work for every single person because we're all different. We all have different lifestyles. We all have different bodies, but we're all humans. So it's like, that's the thing to really highlight, is that we are all seeking a very similar experience. And so it really just comes down to pursuing your passions, pursuing your joy, expressing yourself in a way that doesn't hinder other people from expressing themselves, and just like doing it from a place of like what it is that you want to seek to create in the world. I love, like, I think I quote Gandhi's quote at least once or twice a day to somebody, be the change that you want to see in the world.
Right.
That is a solution seeking mindset. It's not a problem solving mindset, because when you focus on what you want to create, that's what's going to show up for you. Not when you're trying to run away from, not what you feel like you have a lack of in your heart, not what you feel like makes you different or lesser than someone else. Like, be who you are, because who you are is fantastic, is beautiful, is totally complete, is loving, is that spark of light, is that spark of possibility. So own it. Like, we're all made of stardust. Isn't that the coolest thing ever to think of?
Yes.
And that we're all born of this earth. Like, the earth peoples, just like apple trees apple. Like, you know, we're all part of it. So it's really cool to really just like create a new story based off of these different belief structures that we can like choose to impart on ourselves. Like, if we want to choose to see ourselves as separate, then that's going to be the world that you choose to experience it in. And so when we choose to think of something more empowering, or something that's actually going to benefit us in our story and really rewrite the story of what we want to read. This is something that I talk about a lot as well, is like, be the hero in your own story. You don't have to create yourself as the victim. I wrote that in my book,
like, you're the main character in your own movie.
It's so true. It's so true. And again, a lot of people just get caught up rewriting the past over and over again. And and one thing that kind of came up for me when we were talking about this, the past really only exists in our minds.
Right.
That's the only place it exists.
It's an energetic imprint. That's it.
Yeah. And so does the future. I mean, like, the future does as well. So, I mean, in essence, all there really is the present. But I do love the idea that we can keep focused on what we want to create in this present moment. So whether it be a loving relationship with your partner, or a beautiful new home, or a job that you feel like you're expressed and you're living your passion, like, these are all things that you're moving towards. But and it's really interesting from the human perspective, time is linear. So there is a past and a present, but from kind of that outside perspective, there really is no time, and there only is the present moment. So it's just us creating that present moment to attract what it is that we want to see. Now, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but just part of our human experience here is, since we do have a human experience, we also experience time dilation. So sometimes what we are working to manifest is not instantaneously manifest. However, it's already created. It's already there. Yeah, it's already there. So it's just us moving to that space where it is. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Interstellar, but I think there's a part in the end where basically Matthew McConaughey is like kind of going through something called like a tesseract.
How did I not see Interstellar? He's like my hall pass.
Oh, it's great. I definitely recommend checking it out. Okay, but it's really cool because we typically think of things as space-time. Right. I think that's what Einstein calls it. But in a higher dimensional view, it's actually time-space.
Right.
Yeah, it's not space-time. So it's like time is really like you move through time in space versus like, I don't know. I can't really describe it all that well. But it's an interesting concept to think that everything that
not
you've ever
linear.
wanted is already there. It's
Yes.
already here. It's here in escrow somewhere. And if you look along the lines of like the infinite reality theory or like parallel realities, it's just really aligning with that vibration of that being a thing in your own personal
Yeah, that's how you
experience.
jump timelines.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally cool. So
I mean, I could tell. I am not a quantum expert in any, like, no, zero way, shape, or form. But I could have that conversation. Like, I probably could stay up all night, stay awake the next day. Like, those kind of conversations excite me so much, even with my limited knowledge, because I have this like DNA remembrance. Like, I just know it to be true. So even though I don't have a scientific understanding of it, I have this energetic understanding of it. Like, I know it, that so many things exist outside this third dimension. And that's my belief anyways. And so it's easy to connect with the information on some level. There's like a resonance, a knowledge, even though I couldn't like test on it. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've really nerded about this stuff like since I was a little kid. Always loved learning about like why the world is the way it is. But the coolest thing that I've kind of come to understand is you don't necessarily need to know how a flashlight mechanically works in order to use the flashlight.
Thank goodness.
And so it's like it's really interesting. So I guess like from a generalized perspective, you don't need to know how law of attraction works in order to make it work. In fact, like I've experienced in my own kind of like in my own realm of experience that the knowledge in itself can almost be a double-edged sword when you become hyper focused on it. And then you're just like, you're ultimately like too caught up in what you're not wanting to create, which creates more of that. So from a generalized perspective, just focus on what you want and like what it's going to feel like when you get there,
right,
and just keep taking steps every day, whether they be small steps or large steps in the direction that you want. And even if it's 1 degree of separation, taking out a week, a month, a year, 10 years, like you're going to be in an entirely different spot than you would be if you just stayed on the same path. Small hinges swing big doors. It's so true.
For people who are watching, and I know there's a lot of women who are moms watching and who are going like, yeah, that's great, but I don't have time and I don't have money. And like, I could barely fit in an apple for lunch. Like, but the thing is, so we tell ourselves that story that we have no time. Like, and I'm not denying that feeling of hectic. I have lived it. I know it very, very well. I'm very familiar with it. But what happens is we'll ask for like, we'll say, I just wish, or I just want, and then we'll get a nudge, the universe goes, okay, let's see. Mm-hmm. And you'll get this urge to like say something to the world or to, go somewhere. And then we're like, I can't right now.
Yeah. And it's so true. And I've definitely seen this a lot in my life as well. You'll get that intuitive ping to go do something. And even if you recognize it as a good idea and you're like, I'll just do it later. When later comes, you are not feeling even remotely as inspired to do the thing.
100. And it doesn't even sound like a good idea
and
anymore.
It does, yeah. And then like, even if you do follow it, your way of being is totally out of alignment
100%.
to like where you were in that time where it would have likely worked out. But now you're already imparting like all sorts of judgments and resistance into the equation that it's just, you're already working against yourself. So sometimes it is just those weird intuitive pings or hunches or gut feelings or something. You'll get some weird random idea. And this is literally how the universe works.
Yes.
A lot of people ask me, like when I'm talking about law of attraction, they're like, all right, well, isn't action just really important? Don't you have to act to follow through? I'm like, not necessarily. Like action can sometimes like move you in that direction a little quicker. But okay, here, for instance, here's a good example of this. I was currently looking for like a place to live. I'm like in transit right now between like stable living situations. And my current living situation was going to be up in about a week and a half. And I didn't really have anywhere set to be like for a prolonged period of time. I had a couple friends that I could go crash on their couch for a few days or just like someone who could like look after my dog for a little while, just like while I'm finding like a more permanent place to live. Right. And so this was weighing on my mind a lot over the last month and a half or so. And so I was worrying about it. And if we know anything about worrying, it's from that place of fear. What if this doesn't work out? What if I can't find a place to live? What's going to happen?
So it's a lack of trust, right?
It's a lack of trust. Okay. Absolutely. So in this space of not trusting myself and not trusting that the universe can figure it out for me, which it always does, is like, I started looking for places to live. I did it for about an hour looking online, felt so disempowered, felt so just like, I was like, this is not working. I can totally tell that this is not working for me. So I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to do this differently. I know law of attraction works. It works all the time. I can see it examples in my life and other people's lives. And anyone who's still kind of on the fence about this, have you ever had a bad day that just keeps getting worse, or a really good day that just keeps getting better? That's law of attraction right there. So basically what happened is I was like, all right, that's it. Things always are working out for me. I always will have a place to live. I totally trust in the universe to basically help me figure this out. And I'm just going to stop worrying about it. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just going to put it out there that I know things are going to work out and things are going to show up for me. So anyway, a couple weeks go by. That's totally fine. I get a call from a good friend who runs farmers markets, and I've worked a couple farmers markets for him in the past. And so he's like, hey man, I know you're busy, but is there any way that you could help me out with this farmers market this weekend? This kid I hired, he's basically bailing out because he has to take some ACT testing or something like that. He's leaving me kind of like hanging. I'm kind of screwed. Is there any way you can help me out with this? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, I've got that weekend open. Like, it'd be a nice change of pace. And I love doing the farmers markets anyway. So it's like something that I'm just like, I actually really enjoy. So we start talking, and he's like, well, what have you been up to lately? This and that. And I'm like, oh, I'm just kind of in transit, blah, blah, blah. Still looking for a place to live. I've got a couple friends who can house me for a little while, but until I find a better spot, like, I don't really know where I'm going to be set up. He's like, well, you know, I've got an open room in my house. Like, you can totally just come in and like crash with us for as long as you want, rent free. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Thanks for the offer.
Yes, so, I'll take it.
So yeah, exactly. What was I doing? I was hanging out at the dog park playing fetch with my dog when it happened. So that's the only action I had to take to make this thing work, is just like, and allow it. It really is an art of allowing. It is a process of surrendering to the field of the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. It's really just this trust in knowing that things will work out for you, and actually believing it and letting it go to the universe. Because in all essence, like, and I heard this example the other day and I loved it. When we're worrying about something, our radar screen is like 3 inches wide. Yes. All right. Everything that we can like understand and control, and all the pieces that we think that we can affect, is so minimal. The universe is working on a radar screen that is hundreds of feet across. You do not even have any concept of all the working pieces. It could be the weirdest thing. So like, for example,
it is the weirdest thing. That's like that's the magic.
It can literally come out of the most random place that you have had no thoughts of, because it's involving people who you've never known, doing things that you've never heard of. And all of a sudden it's collapsed down into your experience right now. And it's giving you exactly what it is you're looking for. That job you've always been looking for. You could just be out shopping one day and just mention casually to a friend that it's your job. And there could be another person there shopping who's like, wait a minute, I just started this business that's actually looking for this exact position.
That is literally
like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So it's just like, this is how it works. It's like often, and it's the backwards law, because the harder you try, the more it's only reinforcing the lack of you having that thing. So sometimes it just comes to letting go and just being like, all right, you know what? I trust things are going to work out. I'm just going to constantly imagine what it's going to feel like when they do work out. I'm going to feel exuberant. I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to feel abundant. I'm going to feel like I've got all the love and attention I could want in my world. I'm going to walk down the street like I'm confident. Sometimes it comes down to state creation. You know, if you're sad and you force yourself to smile, eventually you will feel happier. It is a proven thing that they've shown in multiple experiences. So it's this cool thing that we're constantly creating ourselves. And are we choosing to let our fear determine what we do it consciously or not? That's really what it comes down to. And awareness is the first step to changing anything, is you got to be aware of it first. So.
And I think that trust and belief are married. They're like a really great couple. Like they're in a never-ending relationship, because here's the thing. Beliefs are true. Whatever you believe to be true is going to be true. Like there is no finite truth. It is just what you believe to be true. You trust that belief, and therefore that belief is real and true. And what happens is when you change your belief, it's new, and you doubt it because it's not the belief you've held on to for so long, which means that you don't have that force of trust behind it. And so when you change a belief, it takes time for trust to catch up. And what it takes is patience, because when you change a belief and you say, this is now my new belief system, and I trust that the universe, you know, as long as you trust that the universe always has your back, if that's your foundation, then when you change a belief, it takes a while, but soon enough, the universe starts to give you evidence and proof, and then your trust fortifies. And soon enough, that trust is built in the way it was before. You know, if you tell yourself that something is dangerous and you believe it to be true, then you trust 100% that if you do it, something bad is going to happen to you. And as soon as you pivot that belief and say, well, maybe it's not dangerous, maybe if I try it, it won't hurt, and it won't hurt me. And then you don't trust it because it's a new belief, you know, but you do it and it doesn't hurt you. Now your trust level just went up a little bit. So you try it again and it doesn't hurt you. Now your trust level and so the goal, I think, is to fortify the trust as you change your beliefs and kind of keep them married and tied together, because they work in unison really well together if you can partner them up, you know, if you know how to use them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's actually really interesting. Like when it comes to limiting beliefs, it's a lot easier for people on the outside of us to point out our limiting beliefs to us, because they aren't the ones who are experiencing our truth. So it's this really interesting concept that pretty much every limiting belief that we have going on in our life is actually a superstition. Now, what is meant by this is that superstitions are only superstitions if you don't think it's a superstition. So take, for example, someone who has like the superstition that a black cat walking across their path is bad luck.
Yeah.
They believe that. They believe it to be true. And whether there's any sort of evidence to support it or not, that's typically where superstitions come from, is from a lack of or very little evidence to actually support this belief. You'll see someone walking down the street, a black cat will come across them, they'll jump out of the way and run to the other side of the street. And to someone who doesn't have that belief or that superstition, it's entirely ridiculous. You're like, what is this person doing? But the thing is that with superstitions, it all comes down to how it affects our behavior. Because if we believe something to be true enough to the point where it's actually affecting our behavior, say, for example, you have a bad run-in with the opposite sex, and now you're believing that everyone in the opposite sex is a bad person, they're all meant to hurt you, you're going to be interacting with people of the opposite sex entirely different than if you have a different sort of belief structure around that. So, and it's really interesting to see this, because a lot of times we can't see it ourselves because it's so real for us.
Right.
But when we take a step back and we recognize that this is not necessarily true. Wait a minute. Is it really true that I'm thinking this? Is this really what's real? Or is this just some sort of belief that's coming into my mind that I'm actually choosing to perceive? Because when you perceive yourself as small, your possibilities are so limited, your potential is so minimalized, and the world seems like a really tough place to be in.
Yeah.
But when you're feeling on top of the world, and everyone has likely had this experience, you can do anything. You could climb a mountain with one leg and no arms if you wanted to. Like, you could literally do anything. There is nothing that ever stops you. And it's the greater that you see your potential and the more that you're living out your experience of what you're choosing to create, the more things open up for you. And it's a really cool experience. So are we choosing, and the hardest thing is a lot of people are like, yeah, Max, I get it. I can think positive thoughts like all day long, but like, I just don't feel it inside. Like, I don't feel like a leader. You're telling me I'm a leader, but I don't feel it. And I can tell myself that all day long, but I don't believe it in my heart. And it's like, just try. Don't let that fear of rejection hold you back. Just give it a try. Give it a try and keep focused that you're making improvements. It's progress, not perfection. You may not get it right on the first time. Hell, how many times did it take Edison to make a light bulb? Like, I think over 1,000 different attempts. Yeah. He's like, yeah, I've learned thousands of ways how to not make a light bulb. So it's just like, it really comes down to heart, persistence, willingness to get through some of those struggles. Because sometimes, like, yeah, you do have to struggle. It's weightlifting is a great example. You're not going to be lifting like 300 pounds on the bench press if you've just sat down the first time. Like, that makes no sense. You're going to have to kind of like work through those growing pains, so to speak, of actually breaking down those muscles, breaking down these limiting beliefs, and really working to create something new, creating new patterns of behavior, creating new routines. Because the more you actually think about these things, the more you tell yourself positive affirmations, the more you start to believe it. it takes a little while to get started. So don't get down on yourself if it's not getting you the immediate results that you want. Change takes time. And a lot of times, like, we think, again, coming back to the idea that we are not separate from nature, our growth actually occurs at the same speed as nature. How long has, like, I've been on this journey of personal development and growth my entire life. Like, I'm still learning, I'm still developing things, I'm still refining my abilities and refining my belief structures to better serve me and better create the world around me that I want to see, a world where people are actually stepping into their power and acknowledging who they are and being able to authentically communicate with one another and express themselves powerfully without being afraid or feeling like they're being judged for their emotional state or anything like that. Like, emotions are just emotions. They come and go. And we honestly just choose to create whatever it is that we want on a daily basis. And it's really cool to see it that way. And self-love is one of those things. Like, I interact in a lot of different Facebook groups. And it's interesting because, like, people talk about it all day long. They'll put memes about it. They'll talk about it. And, you know, it really came down to, like, as soon as I learned that I wasn't practicing it myself, I kind of started wondering, I'm like, I wonder how many people actually practice it. And the answer I would likely guess is very, very little, because if everyone actually did practice self-love on a way that it was beneficial for them, we would not have the problems that we have in the world, because we would all see each other as just on this journey of learning to love ourselves and learning to create ourselves powerfully. And with self-love, just like you said, comes confidence, comes affinity for ability, comes the desire to create something powerful. And it just goes back to that same quote, like, be the change you want to see in the world. You want to see more love in the world? Start with loving yourself. That is really going to create, like, some powerful changes in your life. You'll see your relationships open up. You'll see the way that you see your career open up. You'll see the way that you get responsible in your life open up. Like, as soon as you are on that path of self-love and self-responsibility, you get your power back. It's just, it's totally incredible to see what happens on that path. So it's been a fun journey.
It has. And, you know, as a culmination of this interview, it's just like, feel like we're in the perfect place to just go back full circle, because the video that kind of put me in your vortex, I felt was an act of self-love, because you were vulnerable and you were willing to do something that wasn't perfect, because you loved yourself enough to trust that, like, it's okay. This makes me feel good. I'm comfortable with me. I love myself enough to just put it out there and to just not worry about the response. And so I think that's, like, such a perfect place to end, because that's how I started the video, is talking about.
And yeah, it's fun. Just do something because it's fun, not because, like, you care about what the result's going to be.
Maxwell,
and that's really what it comes down to.
May do a live performance in the Life Reboot Facebook group.
Hey,
so it's
definitely a possibility. So
tell everybody how they can reach you. Now, we're going to post the links to everything Maxwell does, all of the places to find him, but just end with what, like, who should reach out to you and how they should reach out to you. Like, just how do people contact you, and what do you serve?
Yeah. So again, kind of like what I do is I classify myself as, like, a confidence empowerment coach.
Okay,
so
cool.
If you're looking for someone who wants to express themselves better, like, be able to handle your emotions better, step up powerfully in your relationship, your career, in your self-image, like, anything along those lines, or even want to learn how to, like, live your life with courage in spite of all these fears and really move powerfully forward in creating what it is you want to create, feel free to get in touch with me. I do a lot of free sessions and, like, helping people identify, like, what it is they're working towards and what's holding them back. And then from there, we decide that if you want the support, the accountability, and just the structure to get you there, you know where to find me. Essentially, the best way to get a hold of me is through Facebook Messenger. You can find my profile. It's just Maxwell Crino. I do have an Instagram that's pretty dated. I'm working to basically bring it up to speed with what it is that I've got going on right now, but feel free to check it out. It's Swell Samurai, all lowercase. I do a lot of, like, Bushido and martial arts stuff as well. So that's kind of where that's at. But yep, easiest way to get a hold of me is just through Facebook. I'm pretty open. I love talking to people. I love connecting with people. So don't be afraid to come and visit.
Okay, cool. Max, this has been one of my favorite conversations. I love you and everything about what you say. I feel completely connected and aligned to you. And I'm so glad that you took time out of your day to be with us and just share with us, because I feel your heart and I feel your truth. And I'm really honored to have you on the show.
Linda, like I said, this was a blast for me. So thank you so much for the opportunity and the honor that I get to be your first male guest. Like, that's really exciting for me.
Now I know you won't be the last, because like,
So
this is awesome.
it's been so much fun. Like, I
Great.
don't even know how much time's gone by, but
I
it
know.
seems like it's been a split second. So
I
I'm
know.
sad that it's almost over.
Me too. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Stay tuned for more Reboot Your Life series. If you have friends that you think would benefit from the content, ask them to join the group, get them into the group. This is all about the collective. It's all about us growing and evolving together. So the more the merrier. And you can also check out the series on YouTube, and all of the links will be posted below. So you guys, until next time, light and love, and thank you so much for joining us. Bye, everybody.
Absolutely. Take care.